And welcome everybody to the 5 Reasons Sports Network post-game show, The Final Yard. I am your host, Louis Sung, and I'm joined by Michael Quirk and Eric Weideke, we are all understandably discouraged by everything that we saw at the end of this game. I was thoroughly convinced that the Miami Dolphins would defeat the Green Bay Packers. I felt like the Packers did not have the pieces necessary. But it seems to me that we're going to get into more about what I'm thinking. I'll give you my early rant, as Manny would call it. But before we get all that far into it, I'm just going to go ahead and mention real quick once again that our sponsors for this show, as with every show, is PrizePicks.com. It is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, or if you want to do World Cup, you want to do soccer, totally up to you to decide. Just choose the over or the under on those individual players' fantasy projections, individual stats, fantasy point projections. It's up to you to decide. They give you freebie picks like Nikola Jokic, I think that's how you say his name, that's going on tonight. So you can still get in on that one since it's there. They have other promos that are going on as well. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. And that's promo code 5, spell that out, FIVE, prizepicks.com. Get on over there right now. All right. So here's just what's going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. And I understand what everybody is feeling like right now. And quite frankly, it's very difficult not to feel that way. We are getting the same shades of the Miami Dolphins in December that we've been getting for the past decade, it feels like, where in the middle of the season, they come alive, they make it, and they give us hope. And then in December, things tend to fall apart just as the world starts to get colder. And so now we have a situation where we have to actively look at these Miami Dolphins and say, just what is it that you can do here? Are you able to adapt? Are you able to change? Are you able to rise above the adversity that you are facing? And it seems to me more and more, and this is and I'm going to get into the Tua stuff, so nobody think about anything like that. I firmly put this game on Tua's hands because there was no reason for the offense to do what it did. So with all that said, though, a lot of this just screams same old Dolphins. Hate to say it that way, but that's kind of what it feels like right now. It's December. Everything seems to fall apart. The other teams in the league are starting to catch on to what it is that the Dolphins do well, and no adjustments are being made, nor do they seem capable of making these adjustments, because everywhere you look, you think, well, maybe if they try this, and then they try it and it doesn't work. So then there's Jeff saying McDaniel did not make the adjustments. Their defense did. Poor coaching. Yeah. It seems like it. It really, really does seem like it, that this is December, and this is when the Miami Dolphins are at their weakest. The oceans get cold, and so do the Miami Dolphins inside them. So now let's get into the whole Tua Tagovailoa discussion. I want to be very careful with how I say this, because I want to make sure that it's not just my feelings talking and more than that. The narratives surrounding Tua Tagovailoa right now are not his ability to play the game of football. His ability to play the game of football, I feel like, is not something that needs to be questioned. What I am going to question, however, at this point in time, is his mental acuity. I said that I related to Tua because he looks at himself in a mirror and asks himself if he is the problem. And then he tries to do everything he can to fix it. The problem is, and I know this because, again, I am the same kind of person, is that when I look at myself in the mirror and do the same thing, I have a tendency to get into a funk. It's very difficult to drag yourself out of that funk, because once you're in your own head, usually you need somebody else to drag you out of it. And right now, it seems to me that while McDaniel was able to do it at the beginning of the season for Tua, now Tua's back in there, and McDaniel doesn't have any answers to give. And that is leaving Tua making, honestly, mistakes that he should not be making. He was not making those mistakes in the middle of the season. He did not make those mistakes against the Baltimore Ravens. And maybe you can say that the Baltimore Ravens are just a bad football team now. And a lot of people are going to be saying it now. Tua's not the guy. Tua's not the guy. Tua's not the guy. And Mark M says it's time for Lamar Jackson. Listen, Lamar Jackson, if what you're looking for is a quarterback who's a dual threat, then yeah, Lamar Jackson. You're understanding that you're going to basically give up on Tua Tagovailoa already. I understand the emotions of it all. We're all kind of feeling very similarly about this situation. It just feels like, well, obviously the answer would be to just get a different quarterback. keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Ravens weren't doing a whole lot when Lamar Jackson was in the games. So it's not like just fixing getting Lamar Jackson would be the end of the discussion. Now, is the question, well, who does well in big games? It's starting to seem like Tua has a tendency to not be that guy when the time comes. If my co-host Ron Caniff were here, he'd probably mention something about what it was when Tua was in Alabama. He's had his moments in big games in college, obviously. He's also had his moments where it's not that great. And now here we have a situation. We're looking at it. And Jen Will says, if you keep Tua, it'll be like Derek Carr with the Raiders. Derek Carr is not doing very well with the Raiders either. In fact, Derek Carr was doing a lot better at first. And now as the later years, he seems to be doing less and less and less. Mike McDaniel is a rookie head coach. I want to believe that he can learn. I want to believe that he needs time to learn from his mistakes, because there's no coach on planet Earth that is perfect. You look at John Harbaugh with the Ravens right now, he doesn't seem to have any answers. There are a lot of people now saying Sean Payton is the answer. Go trade for him. There are people saying that Lamar Jackson is the answer. Go get him. I don't know what the answer is. I feel like part of it is just the mentality of the Miami Dolphins, like in the franchise. But is that really something you can fix? Is there one person who can fix that whole problem? We don't use the tight ends anymore, Justin Galbon mentions. No, we don't. And I actually bet on that on my prize picks that Gesicki was not going to get the 2 catches, and I was right. Because it just, again, this offense requires players that Gesicki is not. What you need is somebody who's a dual threat as a tight end, who can block and who can catch. Durham Smythe is not that guy. And as far as, because this offense, Tua does not look at his other receivers anymore, possibly. There's a lot of people saying that the offense looks disorganized. Penalties are a problem. Delay of game, way too many snaps. Yes, 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 and yes. But here's my problem with this whole discussion, and I'm going to let you guys jump in on this after I'm with this last thought. Are we going to take this December performance, and are we going to just say that everything else that we've seen from this offense is now irrelevant? Are we now going to look at this team and say, it doesn't matter what you did in the middle of the season when we were literally calling for Tua to be MVP, when we were literally saying that he got snubbed for the Pro Bowl, when we were literally saying that, and at least statistically speaking, he's still in the top 5 in pretty much every quarterback statistic in the NFL. Are we now going to stand here and say that it's all fool's gold, every single bit of it? Is there nothing on this team that is real? And that's the question that I now pose to you. And I realize, gentlemen, that that's a difficult question I just asked you. Whoever wants to go first, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's a bit confounding that you see Tua making the right decision, every single correct decision, that the anticipation is next level, that his eyes are next level, that just the placement is unbelievable. And you see games like that Ravens game where McDaniel is calling just an unbelievable game where he's not only getting guys open, but he's running the defense sideline to sideline for the first 3 quarters to where they're absolutely gassed in the 4th, and then you can take advantage over the top. And now you're just not seeing that. The Tua over the last 4 games, and he had some great moments against the Bills, but it looks like a completely different guy. It's those 3 interceptions today were just unbelievably bad. I know that people are saying, "Hey, he that was Mostert, should have cut in, blah 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 blah, should have sat." It doesn't matter. DeAndre Campbell's right there where he threw it to him, and those turnovers were killers. I mean, I tweeted about it when we only had 3 turnovers at the time, where Mostert's fumble, where the Dolphins could have very well gone in and taken a 3-score lead into the half, and instead that fumble fumble then goes and turns into a touchdown game at the half with the Packers getting the ball right back. But I think that the criticism of Tua is well warranted for how horrendous that second half was. I mean, it was there was just nothing good to really take from it at any point. I mean, you had a terrific first half, that throw to Waddle, where then you let Waddle do the rest, and then that deep ball to Tyreek. But man, the second half, it was they were the announcers were talking in the first half about how Tua looks so much more comfortable. He looks relaxed. He's just going out there and playing. He looked a bit too relaxed and just assuming that things would be there when they weren't there, and then just throwing it without putting his eyes over there. And sure enough, edited interceptions. But then you also think about McDaniel and what he was drawing up, and you couldn't like what you were seeing there either. And the Dolphins are fans are pounding their fists on the table saying, run the ball. And you have Raheem Mostert average 5.5 yards a carry, Jeff Wilson averaging over 4 yards a carry today, and yet they combined for 17 carries. And you go out to a big lead and you want to establish the run against a team who's not great against the run and set up the play action. And then it was just pass, 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 pass again. So I'm gonna need some time away from the game ended 15 minutes ago to reflect on what this means for the bigger picture on Tua and McDaniel, because we were dismissing, hey, just a bad game, just a bad game, but now it's 4 losses in a row. You're set up with an average to mediocre Packers team coming to your place. You go out to a 10-point lead. You should be able to win that football game. You put yourself in a position to get to the postseason. Everything yesterday set up for you today, as well as Thursday with the Jets losing, and you just can't take advantage of that. And so even, as doom and gloom as this feels, there is, still a good possibility at the postseason. But when you look at the bigger picture, is getting to the postseason really what the goal is? I mean, you look at this team in the postseason, who they're going to be matched up with if they do in fact make it there. If it's Kansas City, if it's Cincinnati, can you really feel that good going into that game? You're going against Kansas City trying to keep up with Patrick Mahomes, and then Tua's making these plays that he made in the second half. And what we've seen in the first half the last few weeks, you can feel good about what that is, but you do have to feel that doom and gloom is coming in the second half by the way that things have been trending over the last month. It's so concerning that is everyone getting gassed in the first half? Is it just a lack of adjustments? Is it being too stubborn, both on what Tua thinks he sees and thinks will be there for them, or what McDaniel thinks the game plan should be? I'm just almost at a loss of words of what we saw in the second half yet again. And this can't be dismissed as, hey, it's the Bills in Buffalo in the snow. Hey, you're on the road against a Kyle Shanahan football team. Everything came together for them in that second half. Oh, that Chargers team, Justin Herbert looked good, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing to dismiss here. The Packers didn't play some unbelievable game. There's 4 turnovers, 3 picks thrown right damn to them. That was your game. That was your game that you gave away. You can't blame, Tyreek being hobbled by the ankle. He looked great. You can't blame Armstead for being injured, although he had a rough game. Bradley Chubb was semi non-existent. It's just an absolutely horrible look that does not make you feel good about the next 2 weeks, but especially if they make it to the postseason, feels like a one and done.
Yeah, I think this game was really actually a very interesting microcosm of the entire season. And Michael's going to say, let's not blame the coach. Number one played like trash in the second half. There's plenty of blame to go around on this one. In every single phase, the special teams were awful. Again, the defense, while they were up against it, they weren't quite as good as maybe you would have hoped that they could have been against depleted offense. And then Tua obviously throwing the 3 picks, throwing the ball right at guys. But it's just, again, it's so symbolic of this season where the Dolphins are 8-3 and you're riding high and you're feeling great. And then all of a sudden they crash back down to earth. They're 8-7. Much like in this game, they're up 20-10, late first half. Mostert fumbles. Packers get the field goal. Momentum shifts. It's this constant cycle of up and down and inconsistency. Inconsistency is the only consistency there is for the Miami Dolphins. Tua was playing nearly a perfect game in the first half, and the wheels just came all the way off. I don't know if that was a result of him playing lazy quarterback and just kind of assuming that the reads that had been there all game were going to be there, or if it was something else. I'm inclined to believe that it's the former, but I can't say for sure. Obviously, 15 minutes removed from the game. This team has a lot of soul searching to do because I as much as we want to sit here and say that there's still a shot for them to make the playoffs, it's hard to talk yourself into them winning these last two games when a lot of the things that inevitably you're going to say about the last two are what was said about this game going into it, that this is a lesser team, that this is a team that they should beat. And all those things are true. But they find a way to collapse. There's everything that could have gone wrong in this game that possibly went wrong did. And it's really disappointing, especially from Tua's perspective, because there was something, down 26-20, 2 minutes remaining. Those are the drives that franchise quarterbacks that they cash in on. Those are the drives that they end the game. They send the home fans. They send the fans home happy. Tua didn't do that. He did quite literally the opposite. And the Dolphins are going to have to do a lot of soul searching in the offseason. Whether I don't know if they have an immediate lane to an upgrade at quarterback, or even if that's necessarily warranted at this point. But I don't know what to say other than things have to change. Yeah, I mean, we all kind of feel like fools right now. It does sting in the immediate. I can't tell you whether 8-3 was a product of the soft schedule or not, but I can tell you that this team is not as good as they were, or as their record indicated that they were at 8-3. I can't say how far off they were, but I can say that they weren't as good as their record. Certainly not.
This is the problem here. It's that, and this is why we don't really have a choice. There is nobody really to blame except for Tua at this point. Like, we can talk about the defense not being able to get any stops. The fact that the likes of Alan Lazard and not even Aaron Jones. It wasn't even Aaron Jones that beat you. It was just guys. Like, you let 38-year-old Mercedes Lewis beat you a couple of times, as a matter of fact. And with that in mind, again, there's a lot of issues here. Ethan Skolnick, who is the head of the network, everybody knows, he's actually at the game right now in the locker room. For what it's worth, and though it doesn't really worth much, he did ask Raheem Mostert what happened with that interception, that the pass was supposed to go to him. Basically, for lack of a better term, Mostert took responsibility for what happened there. I guess he ran the wrong route, and Tua was supposed to get it to him. But the bigger issue here is Tua does not seem willing to go away. Yeah, he does not seem willing to go away from his first read. It's not even that he can't do the first read. He doesn't want to. He wants to take that shot. He wants to take the big play. He wants to take whatever is there that's going to be the big thing. Now, the problem with doing that is obviously not every quarterback can. There's very few quarterbacks who can just make that luxury. The problem is Tua doesn't want to do dump offs, doesn't want to do check downs, doesn't want to do any of that stuff. He wants to be a hero, for lack of a better term. He wants to be a hero. And very few quarterbacks have the ability to just be the hero. Nobody can do it on their own. You have to take what's given to you. And Tua, when he's given that big play, he loves it. When he doesn't get given that big play, he tries to take it from them anyway. And that's the kind of daring do that, I'm sorry, you're not Superman. You're not invincible. You're going to get burned that way. And I don't know if Tua needs to take a moment to actually look at himself and say, you know what, I can't do that this way. I have to change who I am. Because a lot of quarterbacks will have to make adjustments. Like a lot of quarterbacks are just going to have to change the way they do things. And it's very, very difficult for them to do that. And the ultimate irony, it's actually being brought up by Poltergeist. Tua was called the check down Charlie for the first beginning of his career, and now won't even look at the small yards, because now that he's gotten used to throwing that 10-yard out or that 15-yard shot into the middle of the field, all that stuff that he was getting accused of, it's almost as if he's trying to overcompensate. It's almost as if he heard so much, all that track, like check down. Oh, he just throws 5-yard little dump offs here and there and everywhere. That now he's almost refusing to do it because he doesn't want people to give them that accusation anymore. And you know what? I'll say it like this again. I'm kind of that way. This is what, again, I say, I kind of see myself in Tua there. Tua will do, like, he'll basically do everything he can to prove you wrong. Oh, you think I can't do something? Let me show you that I can do it. And then I'll get burned trying to do it. It happens all the time for me in real life. It's happening right now to Tua. And the other thing, there's a lot of things, and they all point back to Tua. It's all mental right now. I do not question Tua's capability of being a franchise quarterback. I really don't. And the reason why I say that is because, again, if we're going to say that the ceiling is Drew Brees, look at how long it took Drew Brees to become Drew Brees. Do you remember that? And I'm not going to sit here and say Tua deserves defense. I'm not defending Tua right now. I'm not. I'm saying that all of Tua's issues, they're not in the physical. It's up here. And the only way he's going to fix that is if he decides to actively mentally make the effort to change who he is as a quarterback. He needs to change the way that he's approaching the game. He needs to change the way that he's looking at the field, and not in the sense that he shouldn't try to take some shots. There's a lot of times where he hits his guy wide open, and it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous thing. The Tyreek bomb, awesome. Jalen Waddle way down the field, awesome. All that stuff is still there, and that's why I say, can we really just dismiss everything that we were seeing that was making us feel like Tua was MVP caliber? Because quarterbacks get into slumps. In baseball, pitchers get into slumps all the time. Heat fans will know that.
Do we lose Lewis?
No, I'm here. I guess I'm back. Hello?
You can hear
Can you hear me? Okay. My point was, and I don't know how far you got into what I was saying, is that Tua's in a slump. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But just like baseball pitchers get into slumps, hitters get into slumps, basketball players get into slumps. I don't know if you heard the part that I made about Duncan Robinson. He was a sharpshooter for the Heat. Now he can't seem to hit the broadside of a barn. That's not the physical realm. That's up here. Tua can be a franchise quarterback. He can. He has the capability. He has the skill set. Right now, he's in his own head. And once you're in your own head, you need something to really knock yourself out of it. You really do. And right now, Tua needs something to knock his head back in gear. And I'm not talking about another concussion. I'm talking about, listen, you need to change the way you're doing things. And I'm not telling you to stop being confident in yourself. I'm telling you what you're doing is not working. So you need to try something else. You need to try something else. Take some easier shots. Take some shots that are less threatening. Like if you can throw a 7-yard shot into the flat, that's fine. If you can throw a 3-yard dump off in the middle of the field and let Jeff Wilson get 3 more, that's still a 6-yard gain. And then you can just get the rest on the next one. You don't always have to get a first down on every single pass that you throw, which is what Tua seems to be trying to do. Now, can they do it? That's a different question. Next up is New England, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So, Tua has never lost to Bill Belichick. Not on the road, not at home. So, can the Dolphins come back and beat them? Can he beat Mac Jones, his former backup at Alabama? Like, Mac Jones does not even have the Hall of Fame pedigree that Aaron Rodgers has. You could argue that the Patriots really have nothing to offer. But we thought that that's what the Packers had, but they still had Aaron Rodgers. So now we're questioning ourselves, though. At first, we were like, oh, well, we can beat the Packers. And we could have beaten the Packers, but we didn't. We got in our own way again. Is that going to happen with New England? Is Mac Jones going to suddenly become a Pro Bowl, a top 100 football player all over again out of nowhere? I don't know. I don't think he will. But then again, right now we're all feeling extremely sick to our stomachs. I know I am. Like I'm ready. I was honestly watching that game. I was ready to throw up all the food I didn't eat. So this is where it's time for them to dig deep. See if you can find a solution to your problem. There's a lot of people already calling for heads to roll. Like, and this is why I say, can you just so easily dismiss everything that we were so excited about in the middle of the season? Like, does all that just go away? It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. There are times where there was a good run for a while that Justin Herbert would blow it in the fourth quarter like clockwork. Alfredo Arteaga, 3 yards per carry. And by the way, also giving his thoughts on OnlyFins. If you guys haven't checked that out, $3 a month to get into the best Dolphins chat around. Even he's bringing up right now that Tua messed up. So there's no question about that. However, is your solution to say that everything needs to change all over again already after 1 year of these two being together? And I say this because, again, as I was saying, is that Alfredo Arteaga was making the joke that he would bet that Justin Herbert would throw an interception in the fourth quarter and somehow blow it for his team every single time. And he had made money on it 3-4 weeks in a row. So much so that the betting site he was using actually took it down as a prop and wouldn't let him bet on it anymore. Does that make Justin Herbert not a franchise quarterback? How many Chargers fans feel that way right now? Right now, I don't think Chargers fans are saying that Justin Herbert needs to be fired, that it needs to be replaced. Justin Herbert, is anybody questioning his status as a franchise quarterback, even in spite of the fact that the Chargers have done pretty much only just about as much or even less than what the Dolphins have with Tua? Are they looking to replace their quarterback? I really don't know. I don't think they are. I think they're perfectly happy with Justin Herbert and what he has to offer. But they're not really winning that many games. So is it just that Chargers fans are more tolerant of failure than the Miami Dolphins fans are? Are we just so desperate for anything worth looking forward to that we just take it all in and just absorb it? Are we really all just truly arrogant at our core and saying that as soon as we get just a taste of success, we're going to rub it all in everybody's faces? I don't know the answer, guys. I really don't. But I just feel like that in the moment, we tend to feel things and think things that we don't necessarily mean. I feel like that, yes, Tua obviously made terrible, terrible, terrible decisions. And I am not going to say anybody else deserves a blame for this loss except for him, because 3 interceptions, especially when you're needed to actually do something well, is absolutely inexcusable. And regardless of whether Mostert takes responsibility for an interception or not, Tua still threw it. So Here's what I will propose to you guys, though. There are a lot of quarterbacks, again, who fall into slumps, whose teams lose for one reason or another. Again, before the Baltimore Ravens lost Lamar Jackson to injury, it's not like the Ravens were on the fast track to the Super Bowl here. They were struggling. Their offense was struggling with Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert and the Chargers struggling to get wins. You can blame the coach if you want, but Justin Herbert was the one throwing interceptions. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Look at Brady's weapons. Are we just going to finally say Father Time is finally, out of nowhere caught up to Tom Brady? Or are we going to make the joke that Gisele Bündchen finally put a hex on him because they're no longer together? Are we going to make or how about perfect example right now? Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't really looking all that great. And you were the one, Michael, who had brought it up in the pregame that he doesn't look like the same guy. But today he apparently looks like Aaron Rodgers, vintage Aaron Rodgers.
That throw to Mercedes Lewis when he had the entire...
That was dropped, by the way?
Yeah.
So it didn't count. It shouldn't have counted, but whatever.
That throw was vintage Aaron Rodgers, and I immediately thought of my pregame comments for that. But he missed that deep throw to Watson where Watson blew by KK. He had some rough throws, but man, that second half, he looked like who we thought Tua was.
But again, that's where I'm making the argument here, so to speak. What constitutes a franchise quarterback? What is a franchise quarterback really? Because if we're making the discussion that a franchise quarterback is just somebody who never messes up, then there are no franchise quarterbacks, except for maybe one, Patrick Mahomes. He's the only franchise quarterback in the NFL, because even Josh Allen screws up sometimes. Very rarely, but he does screw up. So Eric, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you here because I feel like you've got some thoughts in your brain.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the idea of a franchise quarterback, a franchise quarterback, at least to me, isn't always perfect. But a franchise quarterback is probably that guy 80 to 90% of the time. And Tua, whether we want to spin it or not, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been awful this year. Tua's been largely very good this year. But franchise quarterbacks do not have a 4-game stretch. A 4-game stretch is a quarter of your season, like Tua has had. And whether or not this is growing pains into becoming that franchise quarterback, or this is a guy just kind of showing us what his limitations are and maxing out, and this is as far as he can take it. I can't really say that for sure right now. I'll probably have to sit with that for a little while longer. But franchise quarterbacks, there's a consistency there that I just don't see with Tua. And to be fair, I don't see with any part of this Dolphins roster. You look at even Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers getting the ball at 20-20 in the fourth quarter was terrifying to me. If I had to guess, and I don't want to be a mind reader here, but I had to imagine Packers fans were feeling pretty okay down 26-20 heading into that final possession, just based off of what they had seen on the prior two Dolphins possessions. Franchise quarterbacks put that fear into opposing teams, and I don't know if that's the doing of Tua or if that's the doing of the situations around him. I do know that when things look good, Tua looks as good as any team or as any quarterback in the league. But when things look bad, he looks like a guy that should not be a starter for almost any NFL team at its worst. So what I'm getting at is I need Tua's bad games to start looking like Joe Burrow's bad games, to start looking like to start looking like Aaron Rodgers' bad games, to start looking like Josh Allen's bad games. That's what you need when you're a franchise quarterback. The Dolphins can't have a guy that's either, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, or 280, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. You can't have that. There has to be a flat average performance level. It can't be super high peak and really low valley. There's got to be consistency there. Otherwise he's just not a franchise quarterback. And I think that'll be determined over the last, throughout the rest of the season and probably into next year too, because I think getting Lamar or whatever is a pipe dream. I don't think that they have the assets for it, nor do I think that they'd be able to actually pull the trigger on something like that. So I think that that's a little ridiculous in and of itself. But the jury is still very much out on Tua. Yes.
Well, many people are using this game as the decision maker. Is that fair? Like they based on today's performance and nothing else, many people are deciding he's the worst quarterback we've ever seen.
It's as fair as us deciding that Tua was the MVP after his great stretch. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, as it typically is in these things. I don't blame them. They're emotional. They want the Dolphins to win. I want the Dolphins to win. I'm feeling emotional right now. But at the same time, you can only go off of what your eyes see, and that's the thing. When you have a quarterback that either looks like he's the MVP of the league or looks like he's a guy that should be getting benched, where's that middle ground? Give me a game where, maybe he doesn't have his A game, but boy, does he just do enough for the Dolphins to win. That's what a franchise quarterback does. That's what Tua hasn't done.
All right. So, is there anything else that needs to be brought up?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Make sure that you're spending time with your families. Give them a hug, give them a kiss, let them know you love them. Don't let the Miami Dolphins losing ruin your Christmas. So once again, if you need something else to look at, you can always go back over to prizepicks.com. Make sure that you're using the promo code 5. That's FIVE. They're giving you a freebie pick today, by the way. It's Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. All he has to do is score 1 point, and basically you can already get yourself a free square. You can use the two-man power play to get yourself some free cash, just to give yourself a little extra Christmas present for yourself. Once again, use the promo code 5. That is FIVE. They will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you get yourself all signed up. Michael has already called it a show. Eric, thank you very much for joining me in this trying time. Manny, if you're still back there, thank you very much for everything that you do. I know you don't usually get the recognition and the appreciation that you should, in my opinion. So I'm always going to do my best to make sure that you get it. So with all that said and done, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us. Enjoy your time with your families, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.